Hey everyone, it's Kassem from Robustech. In this video I'm going to show you how to transform your AirTag from this to something like this. You're probably watching this because you received my AirTag conversion kit, which includes one of these. But if you are watching this on YouTube just because you stumbled upon it, welcome. And what I'm referring to here is a conversion kit that I sell on Etsy and my website, where you can convert your AirTag into something that is 3 mm thick and that can fit easily inside of a wallet. I also have versions that work with the Ridge wallet. So, and obviously you can buy it in the description below. So, let's get started. All you need for this are some basic tools. Most people should have everything here except for maybe the soldering iron, which I'm guessing not everyone has, but first of all, you need a heating element. In this case, I'm using a heat gun. You could just as easily go ahead and use a strong hair dryer. That's completely fine. You need a soldering iron, which is what I have here. I have a temperature adjustable one, which I set to 300 degrees Celsius, but if you don't, that's completely fine. I have the tip that I have on it. I don't know if this is gonna focus, but this is a 3 mm tip, I believe. Yep, so it's a 3 mm tip. You could definitely you can definitely get away with using something smaller or maybe a little bit bigger, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't recommend going too much bigger than that. Next, what I have is a tiny, very small screwdriver. It's a flathead screwdriver. It's used only for opening up the AirTags. So if you have something else that's similar, that's kind of metallic or strong enough to open up a plastic case, then you can go ahead and use that. I also have some flux here for the soldering. This is very much recommended. If you don't have it, you could probably get away without using it, but I definitely do recommend it. It does make your life a lot easier. Next up, I have a heat gun. Just a standard heat gun, nothing fancy. And most importantly, I have some goggles. You should definitely be wearing goggles for the majority of this. If you do have glasses, that's fine, but please, please, please be careful. Don't hurt yourself. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, you're gonna have this. This is what you get. This is what's gonna come in the package. It's gonna have the copper tape already on there, and this little metal piece, which is this is gonna connect to the positive side of the battery. This is gonna connect to the negative or the ground. If you don't see this, it probably fell out into the package, the envelope, and you should probably look in there. And you could just like put it back in there. Just make sure it seats inside of this. Let me just zoom in here. Make sure it seats inside of this little tiny hole here. But yeah, so to get started, obviously, here's your AirTag. Mine is brand new. You can remove the tag. You're gonna hear it chirp. You don't need to pair it yet. Go ahead and open it. Remove the cover and put the battery to the side. So this is what you're going to be working with now. Get your screwdriver or opening device. What I found from all the experience I have doing this, I did about 300 plus, maybe a little more, is if you approach it from this side. So you see, let me zoom in. So you see here you have the 3 contacts. If you go a little bit to the right of the contacts, you see this hole, a little bit above that hole, just right here in this exact spot. You can easily go in without damaging any components. There's no resistors or anything under there, so you can be safe attacking it from here. So what I like to do is I get the head of my screwdriver and I just push it exactly right on top of that hole. Push it in at a 45-degree angle, just like that, until you hear a click and you see a little opening. Just twist it. And now that you have it a little bit open. You're going to slide the screwdriver across it, making sure not to go in too deep to not damage these components. And this is what you're going to be this is what you're going to have. Basically, this is a pretty destructive method, so you're not really going to be able to put this back as it was, but that's not really the point here. The point is to make it as thin as possible, so you can go ahead and throw this out. You don't really need it anymore. Sometimes the speaker, which is this part, gets stuck on this. If that does happen, you can just go ahead and pry it off with the screwdriver. Otherwise, if it's stuck here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn this around and push from the back, and then you're gonna see it popped up, and you're gonna just pick it up like this. So this is your speaker. Well, this is part of the speaker. The rest is here. The rest is this coil here, but this is part of your speaker. So definitely keep this. Don't lose it. Next up, what we're gonna do is we are going to heat up the back of this so that we can pry up onto the coil up without damaging it. If you do damage it, it's not the end of the world. You're just not gonna have a speaker. Some people actually prefer that. So if you're intending to remove the speaker altogether, all you need to do is just basically take off or just like pry this up and like just pull it out. Damage it, doesn't matter. It does connect here onto the board in two spots. You can just otherwise just cut off one of them. So yeah, if you are intending on keeping the speaker, which most people like to keep it, what you're gonna do is grab your heat gun, turn it on, obviously. If you have a heat adjustable heat gun, I like to set it to 180 degrees Celsius. If you don't, then just set it to the highest setting. So now what we're gonna do is once it heats up, I'm gonna take this. Oh, and I forgot to mention while I was mentioning the tools, is the main thing you're actually going to use throughout this whole operation is a flush cutter. So if you don't have a flush cutter, definitely go and grab one, and definitely do make sure that it is a flush cutter, which you can see this side is completely flush. It's not indented or anything. This is going to come in very, very handy. So definitely have this. So what I'm going to do to be able to heat it up is I am going to hold this with one hand. You can pinch it here on the white part where there's nothing. You can just pinch that here. I'm just holding it with the flush cutter. And with the heat gun, I'm going to apply heat to the back side of the coil. So just going to heat it up real good. If you're using a hair dryer, this might take a little bit longer, but for me, all it takes is maybe 20 seconds or so. And now that it's done, what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab your screwdriver again and just put it, I like to use my hands for this part, just gently, very gently slide it under the coil and rotate, and the coil is gonna pop up. It is still gonna be attached. Sorry, let me turn off the heat gun. Okay, hope you can hear me better now. It is gonna still be attached by these 2 points, which is what you want. If it does get detached here, you could try to resolder it on if you have that experience. If you don't, it's fine. You just lost your speaker, but the AirTag is going to function just fine. So, and the backside of this might be like really deformed after you heat it up. That's also fine because we're going to get rid of that. So, next step, and definitely do put your, this is the time to put your safety goggles on. What we're going to do is we're going to attack it with the flush cutters. we're gonna do, I like to do 3 cuts, but I also found it to be maybe a little bit easier to do 6 cuts. So we're gonna do 6 vertical cuts, 2 on each of these white parts here, the plastic parts. You can see the spaces here, the white space. There's 3 of them. We're gonna do 2 on each, 1 on each end of it. So 1 here and another one right here. For me, I find it faster to do just 1 on each right in the middle, but maybe it's a little bit easier to do 2 on each. So after you do the 2 cuts on each side, just bend this part out a bit and repeat the same step for each white part. Hope this is in focus. I'm trying not to block the view with my fingers. Okay, so some parts here fell off, that's fine. So now you're gonna end up with this. Next, what you're gonna do is, I like to start with the smaller. You're gonna see there's 1 small part and then 2 bigger ones. I like to start with the smaller part. What I do is I take it right here, I grab it. You're not gonna cut, you're not gonna apply too much pressure, but you're just gonna apply just enough pressure to grab it and just pry it off like that. Kind of rotate it away from the rest of the board. Next, I like to go for this part right here. Do the same. The longer ones, you're gonna have to do it in 2 parts. You can't just go in the middle, or else it might apply too much pressure on the ends, and it might break the board. So definitely don't do that. I like to go first on this side and then on the other side. And by the 3rd one, this is probably gonna be loose enough for you to just like pry it off with your fingers. If it's not, you can just repeat the last step for the last one. But just make sure that before you remove this, that you already did the step where you remove the speaker coil. Otherwise, it's gonna stay stuck on this and it's gonna rip out. So now we're left with this. I am gonna maybe zoom in a bit so that you can see a little bit better. So next, what you're gonna do is that you see that there's some glue left over from the case. You're gonna want that gone. So this is not hot glue. This is a different type of epoxy type of thing where it's hard and doesn't really melt very easily. So what I found easiest is to grab the flush cutters. Again, these are very useful. Just grab it like that and just snip it off. You're not really snipping it off, you're kind of like grabbing it and like pulling it away or prying it off, but just find a way to remove these. They're pretty easy to remove. Sometimes you might not get them on each on all the places here. Sometimes they might just be on here, just here, just here. Doesn't matter. Just remove all the little glue left over. And there's some here. Okay. So next up, this is the important part. Well, everything's important, but this is an important part where you're gonna. These are the terminals that usually connect to the batteries. We don't really use these anymore. We're gonna use what's under them. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab the right terminal. Sorry, this is right for me, but it's also gonna be right for you. It might not be right on the video. Take the right terminal and kind of just grab it and twist it off. The right one you're not going to really care about too much. Just twist it off, make sure it's completely off of the board. Just like that. The middle one, you're going to take it and pry it up like that. Also remove that, you don't want it. And then what you're going to do here, let me zoom in a little more. This focuses. Yeah, so what's going to happen here is where is it? I'm just making sure that it's on camera. All right. Yeah. So you're gonna grab your pliers right here and kind of twist this part off. You don't really want this anymore. So now all you basically your goal is to get just the left terminal on, right? Make sure just the left terminal is on there, and then this is an important part. What you're gonna do is you see there's a little plastic molded plastic on top of the metal. You're gonna very gently with your pliers, don't apply too much pressure, but very gently you're gonna want to cut the plastic off or take it off, just like that. And you just do this very gently, because you don't want to you don't want to pry up the metal. So make sure the metal's still connected. Sorry, I went off camera a bit there, but make sure the metal part is still connected for the left positive terminal right here, right over here. All right, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab it with the pliers. Don't cut, but only twist. So you're gonna take it and kind of twist it off of the pad gently, and you're gonna basically, it's gonna be off right now. And as you can see, I think this is zoomed as far as it goes. Yeah. So as you can see, I'm gonna zoom in post-processing. This middle pad, or the right pad, could be for you too, is a little brown. You see how it's not as shiny as this one? If it's brown, that's fine. If the middle one and the right one or the right one are brown, that's completely fine. But try to make sure that this is why we removed it gently. Try to make sure that the left one stays shiny and silver, because this means that there's still the contact pad is still there and you can easily solder onto it. Otherwise, if it does go brown, or if it's if you do tear off the contact pad, that's not a huge deal. You can solder it directly to a different test point on the board. But it's just gonna take you a little more work. So yeah. So what you're gonna do now that you have these off, and definitely do again wear goggles for this part. I don't want you hurting yourself. I'm gonna zoom out a bit. So what you're gonna do now is, you see how there's a little lip above where the resistors are here. You're gonna want that lip gone. You want the edges here to be completely flush with the resistors, which means that this is going to be as thin as it could physically be, right? Because right now there's some extra bits of plastic that are just making it thicker for no reason. So little overview here. You have this gold pad and this gold pad, which these are antennas, right? We are going to cut a bit off of them, but they're still going to function just as fine. But definitely be careful not to rip them out, because this is basically just a gold foil that's kind of glued or taped onto this plastic. So if you are cutting and you just like pull out, it might rip it out, and your AirTag might kind of lose a bit of its range / destroy the range. So definitely try to keep this intact. But I like to first go from the part without any antennas. You take your flush cutters, again, make sure they're flush, because you need this to be flush with the resistors. Take it, this part it's fine, this part there's no resistors here, so just go ham, it's fine. There's no need to be flush, no need to be completely flush, but I like to be as flush as possible with the board on this side. And definitely be sure not to cut the board itself. Go as horizontal as you possibly could, and just cut these off. So you're gonna end up with a board looking like this. Next, you're gonna move on to this part. Again, there's a small pad here. There's a small antenna here. So make sure your cutters are as sharp as possible, and that you apply as much force as possible while doing this, so that you can cut the antenna rather than rip it out. So here you're gonna, basically what I do is I align the left side of the cutter with, I put it on top of one of the resistors to basically align it with it. And I go step by step. I first do a cut here, and then another cut. Make sure you're cutting very good. And a third cut here. And finally you'll be you'll end up with something like this. You could go ahead and clean it up a bit, make sure it's fully flush. It could be, so basically you want it to be flush or maybe a little bit shorter than this. Definitely don't go too short because you're going to be compromising on the antenna here. So kind of make sure it's flush or maybe a part of a millimeter lower. This part here you could just snip it off at an angle, it's fine. But just definitely don't make sure you're not grabbing the resistor itself while cutting. Make sure you're going on top of it. All right. So just clean this up. So that's it. Now this is the final and most important part. Do the same thing you did for the other one. Just go step by step and align yourself on top of the resistors. Just go like that, and once you reach the end here, you're gonna see there's a little bit of an indent. So you're not gonna cut off that indent normally. What you're gonna do with it is, let me zoom in a bit. So I don't know if you see this indent right here, but what you're gonna do with it is go right before where it begins. Put your cutters, the tip of your cutter right before where it begins, while still being aligned with the resistors, and just cut like that. You're gonna see this indent is still there, right? I would at this point go ahead and clean up this cut a little bit, make sure it's not higher than the resistors. And then finally, what you're gonna do here is to get rid of this, you're gonna wanna do a vertical cut right where that indent is. Just a vertical cut, gentle, like that. And this time, you're gonna go ahead and align yourself with the board instead of with the resistors, but attack from the other side, right? You're gonna go from this side, aligning yourself with the board and just snip, okay? There's an important thing here that I wanna show you, which is that, as you see, these two pads are connected to the antenna by a very, very tiny spot here. Just make sure that while you're cutting or while you're doing the vertical cut that I told you about, don't do it here, don't do it before the antenna is finished. Sorry, where did this go? Yeah, don't go before the antenna ends, only go after, and always make sure you're cutting plastic and not gold, right? Obviously when you're going like this, it's fine, but when you're cutting vertical, only cut plastic and not gold. Otherwise you're gonna disconnect the antenna and it's gonna have some connection issues, right? And if you're wondering why I flushed this part out with the board and not with the resistors, is because we're gonna actually not connect the negative part of the battery to the negative terminal. We're actually going to connect it to this point, which is a ground point, and that's going to achieve the same purpose, right? So we're going to connect it with the foil that I showed you earlier. So this piece of foil is going to attach to this pad right here, right? So just make sure this is flat enough. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just make sure it's flat enough for these two to connect, right? So now that you've done that, this part is basically ready to be put into the enclosure. So what I'm gonna do now, you're gonna need to use hot glue right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my heat gun and wait for it to heat up, and I'm gonna be right back. Alright, so now that my hot glue gun is all nice and hot, we're gonna go ahead and put this in the case. So just a tip before we start, if you want to kind of flatten down hot glue or kind of solidify it faster, obviously if you touch it, it's going to stick to your finger, but if you put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on your finger and touch it with the wet part, not too wet, but if you touch it with the kind of wet part of your finger that's wet with alcohol, it's not going to stick onto your finger. It's going to, like, you're just going to flatten it and be able to release your finger, which is fine. So that's what I usually do. So first what I like to do is I like to get the speaker back, the part that we removed earlier, and just put it on top of the coil. It's gonna slide right in there. It's gonna fit perfectly, and just put it back like that. And next I like to get some hot glue and put a little bit in each corner just to secure it in place so that it doesn't annoy us later on. But when you're doing this, I want you to pay attention and make sure that you don't put any hot glue on top of these three contact pads. You see these three pads? These ones right here, those are fine. You don't really care about those, but just these three, make sure not to put any glue on there. If you do happen to put any, just like with the screwdriver, just like slide it off. Just make sure they're perfectly clear on top of that. So now that the glue dried, we're gonna grab the container, kind of the shell here, and if the this wire is pointed down, just pry it up a bit, make sure it's like kind of horizontal, perpendicular to the parallel to the surface here, and make sure that this little copper pad is bent up and not here, so you can have a clear space to put this in. So now what you're gonna do is just put this right in. It should fit perfectly. Sometimes it's tight, sometimes it's not. It's gonna depend on how you cut it up, but alright, sorry about that, guys. My battery ran out, so I had to just switch that out real quick. So now we're at the step where you basically glue this into the case. So what you're gonna want to line up here is this wire here. You're gonna want to line it up with the pad that that you made sure is shiny, right? Remember the left pad? Sorry, it was out of frame. Yeah, so you're gonna want to line it up with the pad right here. Make sure it basically goes through it, right? Once it's in this exact position, you're gonna hold it tight and grab your hot glue gun and just glue in this corner. Doesn't matter if your glue is a bit messy, you're gonna clean that up after. So just glue right in that corner. As I said, I put some alcohol on my finger so that I can touch this and dry it up fast, and it won't stick to my finger, right? So now it should be more or less secure in place. It's still a little bit, it still wiggles a bit, but it's just at least gonna stay in place, right? So now, next step would be to cut off the excess wire here to make sure you can easily solder this to the board. So with your goggles on, you're gonna take your flush cutters and you're gonna go right on top of where that pad is, right? Exactly right on top of it. You're gonna go 90 degrees vertical, perpendicular to the board, and you're just gonna snip, right? Now that you snipped it, it should look something like this. If it focuses, yeah, it should look something like that, right? Where the wire terminates right on top of where that pad is. Okay, so next up, you're gonna heat up your soldering iron, and you're gonna grab your flux if you're using some of that. I again highly recommend it. I just have some flux right here. I'm gonna put it on the tip of my screwdriver. I'm just gonna grab a very, very tiny amount, right? And I'm gonna put it onto, making sure that first of all you want to make sure that the wire is pushed in all the way, and then you're gonna grab this bit of flux and put it on there. Right. Try to not get it on any other pad that you don't want the solder sticking to. Try to get it onto mainly just the pad that's right under the wire and a bit on the wire. So now that it's like that, try to use a fume extractor if you have one. It's very nice, and it makes sure that you don't have any fumes that you're putting inside your body. So clean up the tip of your soldering iron and get a bit of solder on there. Just a little bit, just something like that. A nice amount. And you're simply gonna take it, tilt this at an angle, and just tap it like that. And now if you applied the solder, you're gonna very simply see that this is basically connected to the negative side of the battery, right? And one thing that I discovered is the negative side of the, the positive. The positive side of the battery actually connects to these two pads right here, which is why I told you to clear them up from the hot glue. So the top pad I think is the left one, and the right pad and the middle pad is the right one. I'm not sure which one is which exactly, but either way, the two pads on top, or the two pads closest to these terminal here, are basically they are connected to these two ends, right? And if you try to operate the AirTag without bridging these two connections, it's not going to work, because it's only going to be getting 1.5 volts, right? Because each one of these is taking in 1.5 volts. So what you're going to need to do is, again, just with a bit of flux. You don't really need you don't really need flux this time, but just with a little bit of solder, you're gonna apply it again to your iron, just like so, and you're gonna come in and basically just bridge If you're finding it hard, you could always use a little wire, but I found that I don't really need it because they're just so close to each other. So as you can see here, they're now bridged, and but just make sure you don't bridge this one, only these two, because that one is ground actually. So just bridge these two, make sure the one that's furthest away from the terminals here is not connected to them. So, and now we can actually test it with a multimeter, which this is not really necessary. I'm just doing this to demonstrate. So if we test this pad right here and this pad right here, these should be connected in continuity mode. Obviously this should be connected. And also now if you want to test this right here to just make sure our solder here is good, you can test this and these right here. You can hear that they're connected too. So that's good. That's the hard part done. Now to the last part of soldering, which is connecting this metal pad to the gold connection here, right? So you're again going to grab a little bit of solder on your iron and just put some solder onto this gold pad, right? I found that I don't really need the flux for this. If you find that it's hard without flux, you can definitely add flux, but I don't really need it. So, and then you're going to grab this and just bend it towards it, right? Bend it towards it so that it's at almost a 90-degree angle, and just press it down. And then finally you're going to grab your soldering iron with no solder on the iron itself. You don't really need any solder on the iron. Just press it down, just like that. And that's it. You can now test it. Just make sure it's nice and bonded on there. If it's not, you can definitely add a little bit more flux or just keep going at it. And now we're done with the soldering. So this should be all ready to test out right now. So you can put this right here, and yeah, so this should be ready to go. Let's go ahead and test it out. So you're gonna grab your battery. Just a disclaimer, the first time you're inserting the battery, because this is fresh out of the printer, this part is gonna be completely flat, right? This part right here, let me zoom out a bit. So this part is gonna be very flat, and so it's gonna be very hard to insert the battery the first time. So what I recommend doing is taking the battery. Let's first test if it works or not, right? So get the battery, and as soon as I insert it, you hear the chirp. That means we're good. That means it works. And just insert the battery like that. Actually, what I'm gonna do is when I ship you guys this, I will have already inserted the battery once, so it's gonna be a little bit easier for you guys. For me, it's the first time me inserting the battery, so it's kind of hard. What I do is I take the screwdriver and I just push in the battery like that, right? Just be very careful not to hurt yourself. All right, so here we go. Now that the battery is inserted, I just like to maybe just rub it against the plate a little bit so that it flattens out. Now it's good to go. I did pair it with my phone, so I know it's good. And if at any point, guys, you do something wrong with the case, you puncture it, you ruin it, do whatever, like if anything happens to it, or if you rip this copper pad off, just contact me, send me a picture, and I'll be more than happy to send you a free replacement. So don't worry about it. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the battery. Again, it's tough the first time, so that's why I'm using the screwdriver. Now that you've done it once, you're gonna see there's a little indentation here, so this means it's gonna be a lot easier for you. Again, yours, I'm gonna try to pre-insert batteries into there so that it's a little flexed out for you guys and it's not as hard. So now it's just gonna be finishing touches. This fully works, it's fully functional, but we're just gonna make it look a little prettier and make it a little more resistant to kind of the weather, right? So I'm gonna grab my hot glue gun and basically just smear it with hot glue all around, right? Be liberal, don't be don't worry about it looking ugly or anything like that, or protruding, because we're gonna be cutting that off, right? So do that. I just like to go around just like this, just covering everything with hot glue. It's nice and covered. Let's go around everything, make sure everything's covered. And this is it. We're just gonna let this dry. So I'm gonna cut the video and just come back when it's dry. Alright, so now that the hot glue is fully set, I just realized that I probably forgot to mention this earlier in the video when I was talking about the tools you're gonna need, but you're also gonna need a nice box cutter, and you're probably gonna ruin this blade, right? So if you have kind of a if you have a bunch of box cutter blades, you can go ahead and use them. You might be able to get away with using a knife, an old knife, just anything with a sharp-ish blade. And because you're gonna want to cut the hot glue with the blade, but you're not gonna just cut it like that, because that's gonna be very hard, and you might cut yourself. So to make things easier, you're actually gonna heat this up with the hot glue gun or over the stove or however you'd like. I'm gonna go ahead and heat it up with my hot glue gun. I like to heat it up at 200 degrees Celsius for a few seconds, and that should get it hot enough to cut through this like butter. All right. So now that it's nice and hot, I'm just gonna go ahead and align it parallel to this, like basically flush with the body of the case, and just go just like that. You're gonna be careful. You need to be careful not to, like, if you feel any resistance while going, like any substantial resistance, that probably means that you hit a resistor and you want to kind of back off and attack it at a different angle, because you really don't want to pry any of those resistors off. But if you did everything correctly, you shouldn't. If you did anything correctly, you should, like, the resistors should be completely flush, or maybe even a little bit lower than the edge of the case. And I can just go ahead and clean up the sides, kind of just like that. You can later on you can maybe paint this or just leave it like this, however you'd like. If it's gonna stay in your pocket, if in your wallet, you probably don't care that much about how it looks. So but if you are gonna paint it, just make sure obviously not to paint inside here. Maybe just mask this off and you can paint the rest, but it's probably also going to add some thickness, so you might not want to do that. Anyway, this should be your final product. Now it's completely flat. It's 3 millimeters thick, and you can just insert your battery just like this. So finally, if your order did come, if you did opt for the one of these cases, I do have also a case without this cutout. This is meant specifically for the Ridge wallet, but I also have a case without the cutout that's just a card size. If you do have one of those, the correct way to insert this is not like this, but actually like this. You insert it like that. You flush out one of the sides, one of the long sides, and you just push straight down. I found this to be the easiest way. If it is a little hard, you could sand down one of the sides, but I personally got used to doing it without having it to sand down anything, if you do it this way. So this is it. It's going to be nice and flush. Go in your Ridge wallet like that. And that's pretty much it. So thanks again for watching. Links to purchase, if you haven't already, are in the description. And again, just feel free to obviously saying this at the end of the video doesn't really mean much, but you should have probably watched the video step by step and paused throughout the way, because that's the easiest way to do it. And yeah, again, if you have any trouble, please feel free to either comment down in the comments below, and I'll happily reply to you, or you could send me a direct message on Etsy or on my website, or wherever you purchase this. So again, thanks a lot for buying this product and supporting me, and have a great day.